You're watching NewsX. My name is Devika Chopra. Job focus right now is the shooter in the Trump assassination attempt case. The FBI has named 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, as the suspected gunman behind the assassination attempt of former U.S. President Donald Trump. Crooks lived about an hour away from where the shooting took place in Butler. The gunman did not have a criminal history reflected in Pennsylvania's public court records. Law enforcement officials have recovered an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle near the body at the scene. A video was posted on social media which showed the body of a young man wearing a grey camouflage lying motionless on the roof of a manufacturing plant after he was neutralized by security service officials and agents. But what are the larger questions that emerge from this particular incident? I take this conversation forward. I have with me on the broadcast Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat, with us. Ambassador Kapoor, I just want to begin by asking you, sir, how do you feel, or rather, what impact do you think the assassination bid will have on America in the coming few months, given that this is a crucial and critical time for the United States of America? They're looking at elections on the 5th of November. What impact do you feel this assassination attempt will have?
Devika, thank you for discussing this very important issue. It has impacted American politics and brought to the fore the divisiveness, the polarization, and in a very dramatic sort of way. It will have an impact. To what extent is not yet clear. It will be clear by tomorrow, because a lot of young voters who were not very energized to vote for either candidate, on the Republican side at least, would now be more energized to vote for Trump because of this shooting incident. And it has sent shockwaves throughout the country, because for such a thing to happen in plain view, when it was very clearly visible to many of the people participating in that rally, that there was this person crawling across the roof with a rifle. And some of the eyewitnesses have mentioned in their posts that they tried to bring the attention of the police and the Secret Service and the snipers to that person. And those people did not react for a very crucial couple of minutes before he was able to fire his shots. And the first shot hit the presidential candidate Donald Trump on his right ear, a lot of bruise, some bleeding, and he fell down. And then the imagery of President Trump getting up and asking the Secret Service agents to wait, because he seems to have said wait a few times before they tried to take him away. And then he said, pumping his fist in the air, he said, fight, fight, fight. So that sort of imagery has become quite dramatic, and that will gain a lot of circulation. The Democrats had been carrying out a ruthless campaign of ads, painting him in a very dark light, vilifying him, painting him as Hitler or worse than Hitler. And now they have stopped those ads immediately, so that the people who were getting absolutely polarized and inspired to indulge in violence, probably that will come down a little bit. The stock market will again show how the reaction is on Monday, tomorrow. So there'll be a better idea as to how much of an impact it's going to make. To most of the other voters who have made up their mind since a long time to vote for either candidate, those voters will not change much. But the voters who are deciding not to vote or were undecided, it will energize a lot of those voters, and that will make a crucial difference. So I think it's a very serious matter for US to consider, and for the world to realize that American politics is not at all the same, that the democracy here is getting imperiled. And if there is this sort of violence before the elections, it is not a good sign. Back to you, Devika.
Ambassador Kapoor, at the same time, do you feel that there was a clear message there sent out by Donald Trump? Yes, there was an assassination attempt and he's been fortunate enough to survive it. But quite interestingly, if you see how the events unfold, there are 6 gunshots that are heard. Right, I think on the 3rd gunshot is when Donald Trump ducks under the podium. He's very quick to react and to take action. It's only after 6 gunshots are heard that we see the security service agents coming on the stage to form that human shield around him. But within a couple of minutes, you see all of them rising up. And Donald Trump, of course, he may have been shook, but he has been very quick to collect himself. You can see that he is worried about his shoes. He's saying, let me wear my shoes. I need to wear my shoes. Then he again takes a pause and he says, wait, wait. And he takes out his fist and he, once again waves at the people who were there present at his rally, and he says, we must fight. He says he's heard saying, fight, 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 and people start chanting as he's taken down the stage. As far as the psychology of it is concerned, what message has Donald Trump then sent out to the people of the United States of America?
Well, Devika, it's a very leading question which you're asking, and that is a good question because on the one hand, you have a president whose age has caught up on him, who is, not able to cope with the rigors of the job, with the demands which it makes on your mental acuity and on your capacities. On the other hand, you have a president who has been, shot in an assassination attempt, and he is able to react in a remarkable fashion, collecting his wits around him and coming back in, split seconds almost in a way, to be able to be aware of what has happened and to be able to react to that in a very different way. So the contrast is going to become clearer to the people that here is a person who can act and who can react, whereas on the other hand is a person who's beyond his prime in so many ways. So it is sad for America that both the candidates are of such poor quality and that America as a country could not throw up better candidates. But currently, if these are the 2 candidates, because tomorrow is an important day for America, the Republican National Convention starts in Milwaukee and it continues over Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 days. At the end of which, this convention is more like a mela because there's a lot of, cultural programs, a lot of speeches, a lot of dancing, a lot of other sort of discussions, and it goes on for 4 days. So at the end of which the nomination process is completed and probably the name of the vice presidential nominee will also be announced. There are good chances of that. And speaking about the person who was the assassin who tried to, shoot Donald Trump, it's a young boy of 20 years old called Thomas Crooks Matthew, recent graduate, couple of years back, 18-year-old graduate from a local school in Bethel. And he has contributed to the left of the Democratic Party called the Progressive Democrats. Some label them as far left. So they are the extreme. He has contributed some money, some small amount of money to them. And then he has lately been labeled as a registered Republican. That may have been a decoy because anybody can register as a Republican. But he had contributed that money to the Republican and to the Democratic cause, far left party side, Progressive Democrats. So that shows his leanings. Now, it's unfortunate that, there is no further investigation possible in terms of his background because he's dead. And the police, I think, and the security service and the snipers, it is something which is a very, very serious security lapse which cannot be forgiven because you are supposed to protect the president. And if the presidential candidate, and if eyewitnesses at the site of the rally are able to see the shooter, crawling up on the roof, setting up his rifle, and the security people cannot see that. The security services, the secret services, the snipers, it's a real shame. How they could not spot that when it is their primary duty to be watching out for those sort of actions being taken by anybody. So I don't know how they will deal with it. It's going to be, there has to be a lot of investigation as to how this lapse took place and why this lapse was allowed to
Yes.
happen. Because for the, I have been seeing the police also, if they are getting polarized, if their sympathies are towards the Democratic Party and they are not really doing their duty well, it's a very serious matter because their duty is to the country and to the people of the country and not to any party. So how they could have allowed this lapse to happen is something which needs to be thoroughly investigated. Back to you,
Absolutely.
Devika.
Absolutely. Ambassador Kapoor, thank you so much for joining us with your perspective. I'm also being joined by Spencer Christie from the United States of America. Mr. Christie, I want to begin by asking you, sir, what really have you learned further about the assassin? And is there any explanation that has been given so far about the security lapses that took place at Donald Trump's rally?
We know very little about the assassin so far. His name, as you've probably heard, is Thomas Matthew Crooks. He's 20 years old and he lives nearby the site of the rally in Bethel, Pennsylvania. He has no criminal record as far as I understand so far, so there would have been no reason for local authorities to be keeping an eye on him. He is a registered Republican for whatever that might mean. Although a few years ago he donated to Act Blue, which is a fundraising site that specializes in support for Democratic candidates. So I don't know what we can glean from that. And of course, it's always a good idea to be very careful about speculating in advance of having solid information to go on. At this stage, we have no idea what his motivation might have been or any other details connected with this attempted assassination. In terms of the security lapse, I'm not an expert in security, although I have been at multiple presidential campaign events and watched the Secret Service work. And like I think everybody else who's been in that situation, have just been enormously impressed, not only by their professionalism, but by their incredible dedication. These are people who, after all, will without a thought risk their own lives to defend a candidate or other protectee, independent of whatever their own political preferences might be. And we saw that in the behavior of the agents around former President Trump last evening, when immediately his security detail, the ones in plain clothes who people recognize from so much television, immediately put their own bodies around him and formed a human wall around him, even going so far as to raise their hands and arms to try to block any kind of line of sight towards his head while they worked to move him off stage as safely as they could and as quickly as they could, once again at the risk of their own lives. So I can remember on the Obama campaign in 2008, I happened to be taking photographs of Obama frequently as one of the things that I did.
Yes.
And so I was frequently standing close to him and standing close to Secret Service agents. And as I say, I was just enormously impressed by them. Now, there is a big question right now as to how that shooter was able to get up on top of the roof of a neighboring building. And so far, questions focus on the advance work. In advance of an event like this, the Secret Service sends an advance agent and team out to scout the location and come up with a detailed plan for every moment of the event. And of course, they check the sight lines for every location where the principal might be. And that's an obvious sight line, it seems to me, again, as a non-expert, for a shooter. So I think the main question at the moment is how was he able to gain access to that roof in the first place? It might have been difficult to see him once he did get up there, but I think for me the question right now is how did he get up there in the first place?
Absolutely, and that's a question for everyone as well. Mr. Christie, I also want to understand from you, sir, how exactly is the public in America at this point in time reacting to this assassination attempt?
Well, it's hard to, there is no unified response, except that I think that everybody who believes in democracy or basic human decency is shocked and horrified. There are some partisans who are already trying to glean political advantage from this event, which I think is reprehensible. And I certainly don't intend to do that immediately after such an attempt. But from what I've seen, as I say, amongst people who believe in democracy or just people of goodwill who believe in basic human decency, that has been uniform expressions of horror, not only because it's so deeply wrong, of course, to attack any human being, but in the context of a democracy, an attack on a political candidate is an attack on democracy itself. So it's something none of us can tolerate.
Mr. Krishy, at the same time, you spoke about how there are some people who are trying to gain political mileage out of what has happened. It has been very dramatic, the sequence of events that have taken place, the visuals and the photographs that have come out. We've seen Donald Trump then also continuing on with his rallies thereafter. He was seen exiting from a flight at night and making his way to another event. What really do you think is the message that he's then sent out to America after what has happened, given the fact that there was an assassination attempt, but within 2 minutes, we saw him rising back up from the podium with his fist in the air and saying that he's going to continue fighting? What's the message that he has sent out, as per you?
If I may, my understanding is that immediately after the event, just as a technical detail, he flew to Bedminster, New Jersey, where he has a golf club and residence, and spent the evening there. He has issued a couple of statements since then. But it's a good question because so much of politics happens in the realm of symbolism and emotion as opposed to just the simple, factual, logical content of whatever is happening from one moment to the next. And so former President Trump's response of immediately standing up and raising his fist and the photos of that behavior that resulted are enormously powerful politically. At bottom, any political campaign appeals to the basic human desire for a strong leader, no matter how a person might define a strong leader. And this is something that political candidates need to learn or else risk losing, that it really, at this level, does not matter very much what you're saying. It matters how you say it. And much of that is visual or in the sound of your words as opposed to the actual content. And so his behavior in that moment, as I say, was enormously powerful symbolically, as was the assassination attempt. As terrible as it is, to have an attempt on his life also puts him in the position of a potential martyr on behalf of the cause he says he represents.
Yes.
And then to have him survive that attempt makes him seem all the stronger to the people who already wanted to follow him.
So is there then some chatter about how this assassination attempt could impact the upcoming elections? Are people already somewhere talking about that, discussing that? What are they saying?
Yes, political professionals certainly are aware of the power of symbolism, as I just described. And so, again, it's uncomfortable to talk in these terms after this man almost lost his life, and
yes,
another person at the rally actually did, and two others, as I understand, are very seriously injured. But yes, political professionals recognize that this can be a great boost to former President Trump's campaign, depending on how he handles his response to it. If he is able to respond with some kind of dignity and statesmanship, I think it will accrue all the more to his advantage. If not, then I think he will lose much of that advantage, at least among swing voters. And similarly, on the Democratic side, I'm glad to see that the Biden campaign immediately suspended their political activities for the time being and started scrambling to get the TV networks and local stations to stop playing Biden campaign commercials for now. And that President Biden came out and made a very strong public statement, not only deploring this event, but deploring political violence of all kinds. So I think politically, that is, of course, exactly the right thing to do. But in my opinion, as so often happens, It's morally the right thing to do. And as cynical as politics can get, based on my own experience, I have found that doing the right thing very often turns out to be the smart thing to do too. It's as hard as it can be for people who see themselves as hard-bitten realists to believe. But if you start with the truth and start with doing your very best to do the right thing, it's like occupying the high ground that everybody else can only try to displace you from.
Okay, Mr. Krishy, I'd also like to understand from you then. Of course, Donald Trump has been extremely fortunate to survive this assassination bid. But do you feel that somewhere what has happened could possibly regurgitate some conversation about a culture of gun violence in the United States of America? Or will this simply become a political conversation at the end of the day?
No, certainly it will. Unfortunately, I'm not confident it will lead to much progress. There has been some progress on gun violence under President Biden. He was able to get bipartisan gun legislation through as one of his accomplishments. It makes a difference, but only a small difference, unfortunately. I know he and many others would like to see more and keep working on that. But the two sides on this issue are polarized the way they are polarized on many other issues. And it's extremely difficult to find common ground on an issue when you're not actually even living in a common reality in many ways. For one side, the Constitution doesn't provide any absolutely unrestricted rights. You have a right to free speech that's very broad, but it's not absolutely unrestricted. And neither is any other right. The moment you start to do harm to other people, your rights begin to be restricted. And so on one side, the belief is there should be some kind of reasonable regulations on ownership of a lethal device like a gun. On the other side, the gun is a symbol of freedom that goes back to the American Revolution, and there should be no restrictions on it whatsoever. And their argument would be precisely the opposite, not that guns should be regulated, but that everybody at that event should have been carrying a gun, and then they all presumably could have fired back. I think many of us with any experience in this area, and I do have some experience in that area, would say that would lead to far more injuries and deaths in the melee that would result with a bunch of amateurs firing off their guns. But unfortunately, I think that polarization will continue and probably intensify, at least in the coming days.
And do you feel that it does not then, as per your analysis or opinion, does not put the Republicans on the back foot as far as conversations about gun violence are concerned? Because Joe Biden has made that a commitment of his campaign. In fact, just a few days ago, he posted on social media, he said that we want to regulate guns in America, we want to ban guns in America, but it's Donald Trump. He literally named him, saying that he will never do it. They will never go against the gun lobby. So do you feel that could this somewhere put the Republicans on a back foot, the fact that this incident has taken place at the rally of Donald Trump? Or, like I said, that conversation just does not exist?
Well, it puts them on the back foot with the majority of Americans, as they already were. By the way, just a small adjustment to what you just said. President Biden does not want to ban guns. He does want to regulate them.
Yes.
The great majority of Americans, including the great majority of gun owners, believe in sensible gun regulations. For example, checking, the criminal or mental health background of somebody before they're allowed to purchase a gun, which seems like, basic common sense, I think, to most people, and certainly to the great majority of Americans. And this is an issue on which the Republican Party is backing a position that's held by somewhere between 20 to 30% of the population in the face of an overwhelming majority against, including, as I say, the great majority of gun owners, including the majority of members of the National Rifle Association, one of the leading pro-gun lobbies. However, guns have enormous symbolic importance to the base of their party these days. And they're able to leverage that issue for political advantage, despite the fact that it looks like a losing issue. It also, this is also related to the arcane ways in which our elections work, which might be too complicated for us to get into here, but with the Electoral College and the way congressional districts are drawn, it's possible sometimes to win even though you have a losing position, and this is one of those examples.
Okay, Mr. Krishi, before we let you go, like I said, just a few hours back, and I just wanted to cross-check, you said he's talking about regulating guns, Joe Biden, not banning guns, but just 20 hours ago, he had posted on X saying, I want to, and I'm quoting here, I want to ban assault weapons and require universal background checks. So do you feel that somewhere when they talk about ban, somewhere the focus in fact is regulation and it's not on banning assault weapons or guns itself?
Right. So the assault weapons ban, that's right. He favors a ban on assault weapons, which are these AR-15 style rapid fire weapons, which are designed to destroy the human body, essentially. That's what they mean by assault weapon.
Which is what, as per information, pardon me, I'm interrupting you, but I think that is what was used at this particular event as well, as per information. As
I understand it, yes. And this design of rifle is actually quite accurate from hundreds of yards. So not only is it enormously damaging at close range, but even at long range, it's possible to carry out an assassination attempt with one of these weapons. And so, yes, and that kind of weapon was banned for about 10 years, if I remember right, and it appeared to have a significant effect in reducing mass killings. This again, though, gets back to this symbolic role of guns.
Yes.
And unfortunately, in people who I believe are just deeply irresponsible in the gun industry and are pursuing profits at any cost, promote citizens possessing assault weapons as a defense against their own government, as if they're protecting their freedom against their own democratically elected government. And that's a large part of the intensity connected to this issue and the intense resistance to any sort of regulation.
All right, Mr. Krishi, that's all the time that we have. I thank you so much for taking out the time to join us and bring us that ground perspective from the United States of America. Stay tuned. We will continue to track developments on the other side.